All right, so if everybody please give a warm welcome to our guest, Atsushi. So, Atsushi.
Hello.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Excellent. If you could please just tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get started in game audio?
Okay, so hello everybody. I'm Atsushi from Square Enix, Japan. I came to New York less than 24 hours now. My main reason for me to be here is to visit Jason at Avalanche Studio. Yeah, well, first of all, before getting started with that, so I wanted to come to talk with Jason about what he's been up to, and I'm going to introduce me to Jason, what I've been doing at Square Enix, because we kind of work together, like, separately, but
same publisher.
Yeah, same thing. So yeah, that's my main reason to come here. But besides that, he really great thing for him to organize this event. So I'm lucky enough to be here to talk with you guys.
And thank you so much for coming.
It's great. No? So how did I get started? I basically had no idea about game audio in general. I was a student at university in UK, and I came to I went to UK in 1999. So I started studying there, and I was studying music, and I ended up having a degree in music production in the UK, and that's kind of what I wanted to do, basically, when I was a student. But it's hard for me to get like the decent job, basically, as a musician or music-related kind of thing. So I had a mentor at the college that I was studying, and he basically introduced me about the whole new thing called game audio, and I didn't know anything about. But he basically said, there's a huge thing about game audio in Japan as well, where you're from. And I was like, didn't know, but because I was in UK for a long time. But thinking back, that was the best thing he ever, taught me about. And I ended up going back to Japan and look for a job, and I ended up getting a temp job, basically. So I started as a temporary sound editor at Square Enix. That was 2005, and since then I've been working there.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you've been there a long time.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. So you started as a sound editor.
Sound editor, yeah.
Okay, what did that mean exactly? Is that editing sound effects or dialogue or?
Basically both. We've done both. As a temp, you kind of work very basic stuff, and that was when PS2 era. So everything was done in game engine. So we kind of edit the sound, cut the sound, but we cut the sound for game engine. So that kind of was different, basically.
And was that using Scream?
It's similar with Scream, yeah. With Square Enix, we have in-house tools. Everything is done in-house pretty much. So everything, including audio tools as well. So our audio programmers, they built in-house tools to be able to integrate everything into the game. That was PS2 era. So, yeah.
For those that aren't aware, Scream is it's Sony's proprietary audio engine that was back in the day. It was very it was comparable to, I guess, what FMOD can do now. That was like the main audio engine that you had to know if you were in game development. So all right, so you start off as a sound editor there, and how you eventually made the transition to sound designer. That's a distinction made at Square Enix?
Yeah. So as the time goes by, I became sound editor, and after that, sound designer. And as the time goes by, there's like era from PS2 to PS3 and PS3 to PS4. So my kind of job description kind of went up as the time goes by.
And so when you were in school and you were studying music production, So you weren't actually studying an instrument. You were actually studying how to record and make records and...
Yeah, so I was there's a music composition course as well included in that. So I'm kind of studying composing music for media. That was the time. There was any game thing, basically.
Yeah, me too. When I went to school, there was no game audio program or anything. It was just, like you could learn how to record. That was it.
So that was like there was two choices, either film or TV, and that's it. Yeah, at the time. Yeah.
Wow. And what you learned in school, how well do you feel that translated to what you did at Square when you first started?
For the recording technique and all this gear and studio, how to use studio and all that kind of thing, that kind of went really into practice. But the rest of the stuff I just didn't know anything about. And that was really great for me because I studied from learn from Joe, basically. So everybody that I worked with, those are the people that really taught me well.
Okay.
So I think that went really well for me because it was like a sponge. I just, everything was in my brain straight away. Whereas if I had like kind of in the background, somebody was teaching me how to do things, that kind of got me into trouble because I couldn't be able to like learn from the audio professionals that I used to work with because those are much like better people, basically.
Yeah. Sure. And your formal training for music production, were there a lot of people that had that knowledge at Square at the time, at Square Enix?
Half of them had, but half of them didn't. So people had just... some people, one of my boss, he used to work as a Foley artist, and he had a background from film, so he used to work for films like Mononoke Hime. It's like Miyazaki film.
Yeah.
So he worked on that, basically. That's great. He had a great career as a Foley artist, but he ended up working at Square Enix. No reason whatsoever. Right. So maybe anime was enough.
It must have been great to learn from him.
Yeah. So he's great as well. So guys
Very
like
cool.
that. Yeah.
What was your biggest influence in music or sound when you were coming up and getting first into games?
Yeah. So when I was a teenager, there was a 90s Brit pop. So British pop or rock.
Sure.
That was a huge thing when I was a teenager. And I used to love that kind of music. And I'm a guitarist as well. So I used to learn how to play all these music. And, I used to love Rolling Stones. That was kind of my thing. So I thought about, okay, maybe I could go to England to study music. That was it. It's very simple.
Did you play in bands at all?
I used to play in a band, playing their music. Yeah.
That's cool. So you played in England while you were there?
I played in the band in England as well. So I was.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
In terms of your path, how you got into Square Enix, do you feel that's typical? How difficult is it to break into games in Japan?
Right. So so your question is great for me because the three things I think I can suggest to you. The one thing is there's always opening for a job like temp position or contract, game related or game audio related thing. Whether it's a QA for sound or QA for any games, you can still get into it. So that's one way of doing it. And the second one is internship. Like at Square, we've got internship to invite students to come to our office and learn a little bit about what we do. And pretty much every game audio or the game company have got like internship. So if you get a chance to be an intern, that's one way of getting into the job. And And third one, I think for my opinion, coming to events like this, it's great to meet people and meet with professionals like Jason, you, and to break into the game audio. I think that's one way of definitely way of doing things. I think, yeah.
Do you know many people in the film industry that, aside from your boss, that come over to games, or vice versa, people that go from games into the film industry?
Yeah, I do a fairly good amount of people in Japan and probably in California, because we work with people from California and they've got big industry. Unfortunately for me, I don't really know people in this area, New York. So that's part of me, the reason why I'm here to meet people in New York. And yeah.
Okay. Would you say it's really competitive for game development, for all the different game development jobs?
Competitive as in like many.
So a lot of people competing for the same job. Is it hard to?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that might be the case, yeah. But there's always opening for jobs.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
So you've been at Square for, it's like, what, 16 years now? 15 years?
15 years, maybe, yeah.
And have you seen a lot of changes in terms of the way the audio department is run?
Right, yeah, so there's a constant kind of changing happening at the sound division where I work. It used to be much smaller scale, but as the game development becomes bigger and bigger as the decade goes by, and we kind of grew in numbers as well as, I don't know, maybe the talent that we have. And nowadays we have, as I said, internship happening, and all the newbies in the 20s are coming in as well. All the new generations, Generation Next is us, but Generation Z and people like that as well. So that's really good and new thing, I think. Having newbies like them makes us learn a lot more about the new things, basically, because it's always, game industry is evolving constantly, as you know. So we kind of evolving as time progresses.
What what tools do you use most commonly in the audio department in terms of like workstation, DAW?
Okay, DAW. Right. My main DAW is Avid Pro Tools. So Pro Tools is my main thing, and SoundForge is for the editing. It's usually the best choice for me.
Yeah.
And sometimes I started using Reaper because that's kind of the new era for them to use. And all the newbies, they love using Reaper. It's cheap and stuff. So
that's what we use here.
Oh, I see.
We use Reaper
you have to
almost
tell me.
Exclusively.
You have to, yeah.
Except we have one sound designer who uses Ableton.
Right.
So it's like, you have to take the good with the bad. But no, Ableton's fine. I think it's whatever works
definitely
for you is what's best.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, there's definitely the advantage that Reaper is affordable.
Yeah. My main reason for choosing Pro Tools is it's very compatible with any kind of studio who you work with, and especially we do lots of international things. So every session files we make, you can basically send that directly to the Brazil or Europe, any Europe countries, and it's great for me to send these directly to these studios and get a feedback from them. Whereas if it's in, I don't know, can you do that in Reaper, do you think?
Yeah, you could certainly do that in Reaper, but it's, it isn't the standard like Pro Tools is.
That's right, yeah. it's issue with the audio professional standard, and
How would you say the audio culture, the culture of your audio department, differs from that of the rest of the company?
Right. Okay. It's very relaxed. Sounds division is more relaxed and friendlier than the rest of the company. I don't know, for some reason. I think that's one reason I can come up with is because we collaborate with each other a lot. We have so many different game titles we work for Square Enix Japan. So Japanese titles, most of them we work with. So Dragon Quest is a Japanese title, is kind of quite huge, and Final Fantasy series we work with, and Nier series we work with, Kingdom Hearts we work with, the rest of the AAA titles we work with. So every sound team, they're the audio director like me. So a bunch of audio directors are working for different series, and we have to collaborate because Square Enix, they have lots of collaboration. And I don't know if you know, but Final Fantasy 14, they kind of collaborate a lot with the similar titles in Square Enix.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so things like that makes us collaborate and talk with each other.
Interesting.
So whole department kind of gathers around and talk about things that we shouldn't be talking about. If it's in the same, one company and doing the one single game titles, it's harder for them to collaborate, basically. So.
And when you say collaborate, will you actually work on other titles, or is it just kind of exchange information and help each other with some of the technology?
Sure, yeah. We kind of exchange lots of ideas and share the implementation methods. And most of the titles, they use different game engines,
Oh, okay.
Some game engine use Unreal, some engine choose our in-house tools. But in-house tools, they varies. I worked on Final Fantasy 15. They have their own game engine built for them, and Final Fantasy 14, they've got their own built-in kind of game engine. So they have to collaborate basically in order to work together. So there are lots of exchanging going on.
So obviously you work for Square Enix, and Square Enix is a very big publisher. Do you feel there's an advantage for doing game development within a studio that's owned by the publisher?
Right, yeah. It's I don't really know the answer to that, because I've been working since 15 years there, so I don't really know from different perspective. But I know from the reason. Every time when I talk with newbies from different industries, we've got so many newbies from the anime. They've got Foley artists from the anime. We've got people from film industry and people from TV industry. So they kind of start from scratch, basically, like me. But they find it really easy to work at the sound division because there's so many support from IT department, for example, is really essential to work in game development. Without any support, you won't be able to work. And so many support from HR. We have lots of support from HR. We have flexible hours. That's really actually really flexible, for newbies to work in. So those are the popular subject every time when we get newbies, they go crazy about, and Japanese anime industry is hard to work in because there's so many overtime you have to go and know. They are all, yeah.
So the last game you shipped with Square Enix is Final Fantasy 15, correct?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
In terms of the musical style of Final Fantasy 15, what would you consider the style to be? And is it? Do you feel it was very much in line with other Final Fantasies?
The music. Oh, I see. Yeah. The most of the music stuff is taken care by our game audio music director. We have a music director, so he takes care of most of the things like contacting composers and scheduling and all this kind of thing, and including creative stuff. Which way they should go for, and so I didn't get in more in details than what you guys do, maybe.
Right.
So, but certainly for the Final Fantasy 15, they took different approach than the previous titles, I guess. And we had to implement a few hundred tracks from previous title, right? Final Fantasy 15's when the Noctis, the main character, started driving in the car. So there's a radio, the track that contains like a few hundred tracks of the game from previously. So that was really challenging, and yeah, so that's totally different than the other titles, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, so that brings me to an interesting point. How large is the audio department, and what are some of the variety of titles that you have, roles that you have within the department?
Right, so we have the guys like me, audio director, supervising staff, and a bunch of sound designers we have work for each titles. And we have lots of dialogue editor. So these people, they just goes on to record sound and start cutting and editing the dialogue. And we don't have an audio implementer because those are the job for us. We all do that. And we have a music composer and a music director and the manager, who is the head of sound division.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Sorry, and we have a project manager and audio programmer.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, they make in-house tools.
You can't forget the audio programmer.
That's right. Yeah, I almost forgot, and that's really not a good thing.
That's your best friend. Right?
Yeah.
So, in terms of the sound for Final Fantasy,
Yeah.
what do you consider to be the three most important sounds?
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great question, and in my opinion, every single sound is very important for a Final Fantasy series, I think. So you can't decide, okay, these are the three things, because those are every single sound is important, because you can't, as an audio director, you can't just choose this is important and this isn't important. Everything is related with each other. Whether it's dialogue or music or sound effects, those are the three elements they have to think about. So when the battle scene or the combat scene, maybe sound effects might be higher in priority, but as soon as battle finishes, people started talking, and that's when the dialogue comes in. So that's more important. So it's an interactive thing, so it's always continuous. So
interesting. Yeah, I know that we so for Just Cause, we have sounds that we consider to be our pillar sounds, which are the what we want to focus most of our attention on,
right,
and really make shine in the game. So like guns or explosions, those are very important to a Just Cause game because it's a lot of what you're doing.
Yeah.
So there aren't any sounds in Final Fantasy you feel are like, this is what we really want to polish?
Yeah, it's a hard question, actually. Yeah, you can't pinpoint.
Okay.
I don't think, but we did have interactive music, and that's kind of a new thing for us at the time when we tried it. And so the combat, there is always music interactively if you're For example, like the boss scene, whenever you hear it, or you fight with boss scene, and there's always that interactive music comes in, and that's kind of I guess music takes over sometimes like dialogue or sound effects, but it's actually a continuous thing. I don't know. It's a bit difficult. It's a bit difficult. Yeah.
Do you feel it's just because like the world of Final Fantasy has always felt very kind of interactive to me?
Right. I think if I compare it with Final Fantasy in '90s, it's definitely different.
Yeah.
And it's definitely organically evolved since then. And the sound in itself changed from, music is the most important thing at the time, maybe, but it changed organically as the game in the West kind of really took lots of influence from films and TV, and always collaborative with what Japanese titles and Western titles are doing. So it kind of copies a little bit of what you guys do, but in our way, kind of evolved a little bit more.
Interesting.
So it's more modern sounding games, I guess, now. Whereas before in the '90s, it's always music was the main thing, and you can't hear anything else. No dialogue, always bleeps and stuff.
Interesting. So you feel it's the film and television's been more of an influence in terms of.
Right now, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely for us as well. It's always kind of something we try and measure ourselves against in terms of. It's interesting. It's a very different portrayal role for sound to play than in games, but it still serves on a quality level. It still serves as a good comparison, I think.
Yeah.
So working on a franchise that's as established as Final Fantasy, obviously, it's been going for a very long time.
Right.
What's your favorite part about working on the Final Fantasy franchise?
Yeah. So as I talked previously, I love the challenge of doing the new thing, and every single Final Fantasy series, there are individual titles. So totally different world, totally different characters. Maybe everybody use Chocobo, for example, because it's Final Fantasy, but the rest of the story changes. So as an audio director, we have to come up with totally new soundscape for individual games. And I think that's what I love about doing the challenge, creating new stuff for each title.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you ever, how many Final Fantasies have you worked on so far?
So it's 5, I think. 5. Wow. Yeah.
That's great. So do you ever look back to previous Final Fantasies and say, okay, I definitely don't want to do that. I want to do something different. And what parts of the sound do you look at to say, I want to do something completely different on this one?
So my job description changed as time went by. Sure. So I was more focused on in-game sound when I was doing Final Fantasy 13, and Final Fantasy 13 was the first title that we worked in Surround 5.1. That was the first thing. That was our most challenging thing at the time. That was like 2008 or something.
And that was PS3?
PS3, yeah.
Okay.
So that was really the challenge. But when we started working for Final Fantasy 15, that was PS4 and different titles, and we developed so much in in-house tools. So we used so much new technology at the time, and we developed it with audio programmers that we worked with. And so that's different as well.
Yeah.
And I was a supervisor as well. So I was more of the management and more focused on the in-game mixing. And so we did lots of mixing, whether it's like music, music in surround mix. We did lots of that, and interactive music as well, and lots of dialogue related mixing, and we have lots of like cinematics. That's kind of another challenge to mix as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Speaking of cinematics, do you do all the cinematic sound in-house, or do you ever use a post-production house for that?
Both, yeah.
Okay.
So we have like both. We hire lots of outsourced companies, but we integrate and implement in-house.
Okay.
So I did lots of mixing for cinematics for Final Fantasy 15 and 13 as well. So most of the titles.
And how about Foley?
We hire Foley, but we do the Foley in-game stuff. So cinematics may be done by outsourced company, but the most of the in-house Foley we do by ourselves.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Working on a franchise as popular as Final Fantasy, do you ever feel restricted by the fans really love the UI menu sound for this,
Right.
or this spell sound was a real big favorite, so I feel like we have to do it again, otherwise the fans are going to be disappointed?
Yeah. I don't really feel that restricted. I think the stereotyping basically gives you a headache in terms of doing the creative stuff. I think the critics, they make lots of stereotyping. Okay, sound of Final Fantasy UI should be this or that. I think that's from the critics, not from the game development. And as I said before, is every single Final Fantasy series, they've got distinctive soundscape. And for us, Final Fantasy 15 was definitely a new thing. UI sounds totally different, and that's a challenge that we laughed about. Yeah.
Do you feel there were opportunities on Final Fantasy 15 where audio got to lead design?
Maybe for the R&D, if you know, we've got in-house game engine, and we kind of did the R&D a lot during the game development. So we did lots of collaboration with main game programmer, and so we did kind of, okay, for this scene, what if the sound could actually took the lead for this particular scene or that scene? And so we did have that kind of conversation with the game programmer when we were building game engine. But most of the time, we kind of, we are left out.
Sure. But I mean, I think so often audio is seen as a support role.
Yeah.
And that's the role it does play very often. But it's nice when you can get people to collaborate with you and to actually, wouldn't it be cool if audio did this thing and then the game followed?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so the 15 was open world game like Just Cause. Well, nothing like Just Cause, but similar. Sure. in open world way. So that's kind of, we have to do lots of, in terms of sound, okay, we have to do interactive in weather system or something. That's kind of really interactively done by open world aspect of it. So we did lots of that, and that certainly helped for sound department to be part of, basically. Yeah.
In terms of the mix, I know that when you set up Final Fantasy 15, it gives you the option of what is your home speaker setup? Are you playing through a TV? Are you playing on a home theater system? Right. What changes did you make within the mix to accommodate those settings?
So we set up two options. Whether if the game user uses really tiny speakers, we recommend to use a TV mode, and the other one is home theater, home cinema mode, I think. Yeah, that's in English. So home cinema, I think. Yeah. So for home cinema, you can have like systems like that, 5.1 home theater system. You get to keep that the mode for people like that, but it's more minor, I think.
Did you make changes to the dynamics of the mix, or?
Yeah. Basically, we did lots of. We applied snapshot mix, so it's similar with what Wise do, but it's similar, but it's done by our in-house tool. But so every scene has got a different kind of mix level, basically. So if you're using TV mode, it narrows down a little bit in terms of the dynamic range.
Okay.
Yeah.
And does it change anything to the frequency range as well, or just dynamics?
We kept it without frequency interaction. Yeah.
Okay. So something I noticed in playing Final Fantasy 15 is that the dialogue, when you're interacting with your party, it's in 2D.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Right? So I thought that was an interesting choice, and I was wondering if you could talk about what led you to that approach, and if you ran into any creative or technical hurdles in terms of embracing that.
Right. For the technical aspect, we didn't have any problem. We could, maybe the scene that you played, that was in 2D, but most of them are actually 3D.
Oh, okay.
So I think the conversation between Prompto and Gladio, or these kind of characters, they kind of talk from behind and everywhere.
Yeah.
Whereas in NPC, I think it's in the center. And that was the choice made by dialogue or narrative director, all these people, because we kind of, for years, we did a 3D, but we had a complaint from the QA or something, when they're having surround setup, they couldn't hear the dialogue from because they didn't set up correctly. So that was kind of like every time when the QA comes, some QA guys have trouble hearing because the setup is really badly done.
Sure.
So that was it's not the aesthetic choice, it's to do with the people from the QA or people from the.
So that's what prompted it?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Can you talk about, is there an audio feature for Final Fantasy 15 that you wanted in, but you weren't able to get to? You ran out of time, or was shot down or something?
I think there are a number of things I can't remember now.
Yeah, it does get difficult to remember.
Yeah, maybe the listening mode that we talked about, TV and home cinema, we applied that. I wanted to do a lot more than that, but if you want to do lots more, and then it's more time consuming, and I think time was the stuff that we didn't have at the time.
Sure.
So,
how about field recordings? Do you ever do field recordings for the games you're working on?
Yeah, we do a lot. We do quite a lot individually, and when I started working, we did lots of field recording in caves and mountains in Japan.
Oh wow!
But that was when we have to use 4-sticks recorder with zip drive. That was when we had a zip drive. So and
a lot of you are too young to remember the zip drive. There was a period in time where, so this is when memory was very expensive, and they didn't have like little tiny hard drives or SSD drives or anything. So there was a technology called zip drive made by, who was it? iOmega. Thank you, Michael. Yes. Somebody of my age who can remember about these things. So it was and iOmega also made the jazz drive. Yes. So it was at the time it was sort of like a technological godsend, because wow, I think the zip drive was 100 megs. Yeah. And then the jazz drive was 1 gig, which was just like mind blowing to have 1 gig that you could take with you and transport somewhere. and it was very expensive and would fail all the time. It's like I worked for a recording studio, and I'll be brief, but we'd try and back our projects up. This is a music recording studio. We'd try and back our projects up onto jazz drives, and it had like a 10 or 20% fail rate. Where just like 1 or 2 out of every 10 projects would just die, and you'd have to send it back to jazz, and they'd replace it happily, but they couldn't recover your data. Anyway, it was a terrible, horrible nightmare of a technology. But,
Yeah.
But please continue.
Yeah, I'm glad you know the pain, basically.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So you actually worked with those in the field.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think zip drives were a little more dependable than reliable than jazz
I
drives.
think so. Yeah. So we use the. Sorry, I just have to look on. I think that was a Fostex. Sorry. Fostex FD8. That was it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it allowed us to record in surround. So we used the sunken surround sounds, if you know.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's WMS5.
Okay.
That's the model. We still use them, but
I'm not familiar with that mic or that recorder. Was that a drive recorder? Was it a hard drive recorder?
It's a drive recorder.
Okay.
So yeah, you get to record on Zip's drive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That must have been interesting.
Yeah, but you've got like 10 minutes of recording, and that's it. You have to swap.
Yeah.
It's no fun.
It's not much different than working with analog tape.
Yeah.
It's just like a few minutes, and then that's it.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And how about within the studio? Any special hardware that you rely on?
Right. For the hardware, most of them. Well, if I do sound design, most of my work is done in PC or Mac. But for the studio work, I use TCA Electronic System 6000. It's the reverb unit.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sure.
And that's really reliable. And every time when I do surround mix, we use that, and it's really good. And it came out like more than a decade ago. But
yeah,
it's been there for a long time, and it's still there.
But you like the sound of it.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, some of those older digital hardware pieces, they're still hold up.
Yeah, I mean you can't replace with the like VST or AX version, because it sounds more natural, because it's hardware and more reliable and stuff.
Sure. How about feature support for if you want to add a new feature to the game? How difficult is it to go about getting that? What steps do you have to go through within your department, within other departments, to have a feature realized?
What exactly is that?
So if you have, let's say like the radio in Final Fantasy 15. You have the idea for the radio and you want to get that in. How do you have to go about talking to other departments to get that feature? Because obviously you need a lot of support for that.
Yeah, so you talk with quite a lot of people for like game designer. I think game designer is the one that started talking about, okay, what if you do this, if you do that? But they have the idea, but they don't know how to implement. So we go with our audio programmer, building new tools for that. We built, for example, for the radio stuff, we didn't build that much, but we did have to do lots of tweak for music mix. I think that's what we did have to do. And for the game designer point of view, they want to do something totally different than what we should be integrating. For example, it's like if it's the UI, you have to choose whether song should be in order of this or that. But for the sound guys, you have to have pause or you have to have a fade in, fade out. Whereas game designer wanted to just change the track really quickly. So that's kind of no good for us. You have to have the fade in and fade out every time when you click and start moving the tracks.
Sure.
Yeah. So those are the stuff that you have to think about and talk with game director sometimes. They have totally different aspect of what they should be doing. And yeah, so many people you have to talk and actually knock the door and rather than just doing the email. Email is the best thing for I think doing the game development.
Yeah, I've found the same. Just talking to people face to face, you get so much more better communication.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's hard to do the knocking the door things if you're working internationally as well. So it's hard for me to do it, but still have to manage these kind of communication.
Yeah. So I want to talk about something else you've done. You actually worked on Final Fantasy Kingsglaive,
Right.
which was a feature-length film. Before we get into that, I wanted to give you guys a little preview of it. Get my right remote here. So I wanted to play everybody a clip from Kingsglaive. This is within like the first, it's within the first 10 or so minutes of the film, so it's the very beginning, so no spoilers, but just to give you a sense of what it's all about. Anyway, sorry to turn off the most epic part, but I love that that's the opening of the film, and it actually goes up in bigger and in epicness from there. So yeah, Atsushi, you actually worked on this film, right?
Right, yeah.
So what was your role in this?
So my role was a sound supervisor, so supervising sound editor. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's basically like the audio director of the film.
Exactly, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what was it like working on a feature film? That's something you'd never done before, right?
That's right, yeah. That was the first time doing the film as well as doing the supervising role. So, yeah.
Did you enjoy it?
I did, yeah, definitely, yeah. It's really mind-opening, basically, role to be able to work in film and game. Because at this development, I was working on Final Fantasy 15 game side as well, so I was doing simultaneous.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I take it you were overseeing an audio department within a post-production house? Or were you actually using Square Enix internal audio?
Yeah, kind of. We're kind of half hybrid for the films. So we are using lots of dialogue editor and sound designer within our Square Enix sound division, and we outsource some Foley and re-recording outsourced. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the audio is very different than a Final Fantasy game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the main purpose. My film director wanted that kind of sound, and definitely the epic kind of sound that you get only from the film. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you guys recognize the voice of Nyx was Aaron Paul.
Aaron Paul, yeah.
From Breaking Bad and other things, but
Sean Bean.
I thought that was what's that?
Sean Bean.
Sean, I don't know.
You don't know Sean Bean?
No.
Sean Bean's Game of Thrones.
Was it?
Yeah, Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry, I don't watch Game of Thrones.
Yeah, he's in.
But that's cool. So, and how much collaboration did you have to do with a post-production house on that?
So for the pre-dub, we call it pre-mixing for the film.
Yeah.
We get a chance to work at the technical sound team. We don't have them anymore, I'm afraid. But at the time, we used to go to Paramount's lot, and we went there for 5 weeks.
Wow.
Doing pre-dub, working with these the high-end people.
And is that where the film was actually mixed, or did you mix it back in Japan?
Yeah, for the final mix, we went back to Japan, Tokyo. We recorded final, but the pre-dub is basically done at the Technicolor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So what did you think were some of the main differences in terms of designing sound for a game? Oh, yeah. Where do you think some of the main differences were between designing sound for a game and designing sound for a film?
Right. So I think I love that question because I have to ask myself when I was working there, because I have to think, okay, what film sound I have to achieve and what sound I have to achieve for games. And for newbies at the Square Enix, they have the same question as well. So I have to teach them how to do in mind. And there are two examples I think I can show you guys. One is a vehicle sound. For films, it's all about recording in field recordings and build up the best possible sound library as you can for the film. So you get to cut the sound scene by scene, shot by shot, whatever it needs. Whereas in games, you can't do that. You can't cut the sound and paste it into the game. So what you need is get a bunch of really good, again, great quality sound library and put that into the games using the in-house tools. For Final Fantasy 15, we built procedural vehicle sound tools. That is done by procedurally, so you can't do that in films.
Sure.
And the other example is the ambience sound. You can't do the procedural ambience or kind of sound layering as you guys do for the Just Cause as well. And if the weather changes, it changes real time and interactively. That's something that we have been working on Final Fantasy 15, how to make it sound naturally as we could. But in films, if you mix the ambience, it's all done by shot again. So it's totally different kind of how you work with between film and games, I think.
Which do you prefer? Do you like working in games better, or after you've worked on a film, do you like working in films better?
More, I don't know. I think both, they're totally different species.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So somebody, head honcho, a big boss at Square Enix says, Atsushi, we have for next project you can either work on this game or work on this film, but you can't do both. Please choose.
I can't do those.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. Well, of course it's recorded. So.
Something I thought was interesting was that so it's complete fantasy world and fantasy time. You have no idea when it takes place, but a lot of the vehicles are very kind of they look and sound like contemporary vehicles.
Right.
But then there's an Audi branded vehicle in the. I think it's is it an R8? Is that what it is?
R8, yeah.
Yeah. So it's an Audi branded R8, which is a very expensive Audi, in the film. So I thought that was cool. And obviously Audi had to work out some kind of deal with Square to get that vehicle in there. Did they give you sounds along with it, or they just give you access to a vehicle to record, or how did that work in terms of making the sound for that vehicle?
Right, so for the Audi, we got access to sound library, so they gave us a bunch of library. We get like all the incidentals. We get car doors, and if we press that, it goes all these kind of sounds that you need. Actually, you need that actually. And also all these pass-by sounds, and, engine sounds, and all these. So
it sounded excellent. It sounded very good.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
So I think that brings us to the end of our interview portion. Thank you guys very much, and thank you very much to Atsushi.